The 14th year of Chenghua. Chapter 151. Epilogue. It was the 11th day, the first month of the 23rd year of Chenghua. According to the practice from the preceding years, today was supposed to be the first day of the Lantern Festival vacation. Officials would also get off from work and would not return to their bureau for work until after the festival. However, this year, on the account of Consort Wan's death, the emperor called a great court meeting in the name of discussing the subject of bestowing her a posthumous title which logically consumed up the officials' vacation time. Many had already heard how he wanted to bestow to her posthumously the title of empress. Memorials had piled up like snow upon his imperial desk since yesterday. Some fervently opposed it while numerous people expressed their approvals and others were even trying to help him think of a proper title for her. However, the emperor looked at none of those memorials nor did he flip them open. In accordance to his previous discussion with Wan Tong, drafting the noble consort a posthumous title was just a front as the meeting's true purpose was the deposition of the crowned prince. Why do I feel like something is about to happen? My eyelids wouldn't stop twitching last night, Su Pu grumbled quietly, rubbing his eyes. He still didn't know at this time that Lu Jian had gone to visit Tang Fan last night, let alone what had happened in the secondary residence of Wan Tong's in Daxing afterwards. The left lid twitches in wealth while the right twitches in disaster. Which one of yours twitched? Maybe you'll be embracing a ravishing beauty by the time you get home. Get out of here. Su Pu playfully scolded, though he quickly put away his smile and lowered his voice as he said, "Look at Wan Yuanweng and his cohorts. Aren't they acting a little bit strange?" Lu Jian furrowed his brow. He hadn't heard a response from Tang Fan yet and he had no idea what development had happened on his end. He thought that he might be being over-suspicious. If Wanan was not giving him any hint at all, then Tang Fang would never be able to find anything out of it. Going with Su Pu's remarks, he carefully observed the expressions of Wan An's group and discovered that the others are not giving off anything that could be described as strange, being no different than usual. On the occasion of being in the Great Court, it was only natural to not be as informal as they were usually in the cabinet, and to seem to be a bit more serious was a given. "Is your memorial ready?" he whispered to Su Pu. "It is." "Do you really want to do this, then?" "I worry that His Majesty will greatly lose face," Su Pu whispered back. Just like how Wan An's group had schemed long ago, Lu Jian and Su Pu had also made plans. If the emperor insisted upon making Lady Wan the empress, then they would submit memorials opposing it. If the emperor refused to hear anyone out, even if they were to lose their black caps, they would do everything in their power. If the emperor was willing to compromise and step back, then they would be willing compromise as well and agreed for him to give Lady Wan another title of honor as an expression of comfort. Of course, the emperor likely wouldn't compromise, which was why they both had their memorials ready in their sleeves, in worst case scenario. "If we don't do this, won't the crowned prince be forced to honor her as his principal mother?" Lu Jian answered. Su Pu sighed and said nothing. Since he had entered the East Palace, the crowned prince had been humble, polite, hard-working, and studious, vaguely having the demeanor of a wise ruler of a generation. Even rarer was his benevolent character, with no one who had come to know him disliking him. Because of what he had gone through in his childhood, that fondness would intermingle with pity. Palace maids were able to give up their lives for him due to that, to say nothing of Lu Jian, Su Pu and even Tang Fan. Was it not because they had come to know the crowned prince and met him a few times that they wholeheartedly wanted to help him be the heir apparent? On the other side, the emperor, who was his blood-related father, hardly held any parental affection for him, though it could be said that this applied to all of his sons. All of his affections in this lifetime of his likely went solely to Lady Wan. While the two were speaking, a school of court officials swam into the hall. After the calling whip's crack, the emperor came out of his pavilion to ascend the stage. All the furtive whispers collectively stopped. The crowd of officials looked austere, quietly waiting for him to speak. Sitting on the throne above gave a completely different feelings from standing below. From the emperor's vantage viewpoint, he could take in the expression of everyone below individually. In the years since he had ascended, he might have seemed tirelessly happy to sit there and observe the varying reactions of the officials, but the novelty of that had long since passed. Back when Lady Wan had been around, he hadn't have the inclination to cultivate himself, merely staying by her side. Every day, he would go to pick lovely flowers, as there were many women in the harem, their features were young and beautiful. Those palace maids, ladies-in-waiting, and concubines were all affixed with tagged of being exclusively for the emperor. Any man would find it hard to control himself, and Emperor Chenghua is no exception. His obsession with cultivating to immortality was not only to extend his lifespan but was in part due to wanting to get back his virility and manliness. Lady Wan had been horribly upset about it, as she was a woman with a strong desire to monopolize him. Even though she had later stopped caring how many heirs the emperor sired, she had still been angry with members of the harem who had affairs with him for a long time. However, the more she forbade such things, the more thrill the emperor got from those secret rendezvous. That had all completely changed upon the death of Lady Wan. He had discovered all of a sudden that no matter how beautiful a woman was, she couldn't arouse his interest. Even Li Zishan and Ji Xiao's remarks about eternal life could no longer hook his thoughts. In the sky above and the ground below, there was only one person that could have made him feel alive. Without her, he was no different from a lone, wandering ghost, no longer caring to keep on living. Maybe we will be able to go see Sister Wan soon. He softly, almost noiselessly sighed. The emperor felt a fatigue that he had never felt before, that emanated from his very bones, shrouding his entire being. Even sitting on the dragon throne and looking down at the faces of all those below suffocated him. Great court meetings ought to have the office of entertainment, putting on a show for them, but today was a bit extraordinary. There was no big celebration, with no one even wanting to touch that mess. In light of what had been discussed previously, head of the cabinet Wanan ought to be the one to step out and propose the deposition of the crowned prince. After that, the emperor would nod his head and agree, while Peng Hua and the others would use that moment to take out the edict for it, using the period before the officials could react to get the matter done. If the opposition objected horrendously, the emperor would take a step back. He would not bestow the title of empress to Lady Wan in exchange, and make the officials compromised with deposing the crowned prince instead. Truthfully, the emperor had set his heart upon granting the empress title to Lady Wan only for the empress dowager to catch word of it, and had a huge fight with him about it last night, threatening him with suicide. He couldn't just stand back and watch his own mother die, and thus was forced to agree not to do it. Apart from the Wan group, no one else knew about this secret information. The court officials believed that the main topic of today's court assembly was to discuss Consort Wan's posthumous honors. Everything was in place. All that was lacking was a gust of the eastern wind. The emperor's line of sight went to the first person below the steps, Wanan, but the other's head was slightly bowed and he did not look up. It was basic etiquette in imperial audience to not look directly at the ruler's countenance. At that time, the emperor could not clearly see Wanan's expression. Why was he still not speaking? Wanan was not saying anything because he was hesitating. Yesterday, he had a huge fight with Lu Jian. It had not been purely due to how the other was jabbing at his weak points and shaming him into anger, of course. After being in the cabinet for more than 10 years, the trials he had gone through had far exceeded what Lu Jian gave him. Anything that was unpleasant for anyone to hear, he had heard them all before. What Lu Jian gave was nothing but a light drizzle at most. He had only pushed the boat along the current, using the fight to convey a message to him. Still, the information contained within it was much too cryptic. He wasn't positive whether Lu Jian had been able to notice it, maybe he had not got it at all. Wanan himself couldn't tell exactly what he was thinking. He refused the conspiracy to usurp the throne and further refused to use a fake prince to muddle the royal lineage. Thus, he was hoping that Lu Jian and his cohorts would catch a hint of Wan Tong's conspiracy and deciphered it, which would thus gain him the merit of being the whistleblower. He might even be able to get a good end that way. Though in another aspect, he definitely had a part in this conspiracy from beginning to end. No matter what, he could not completely shed that link, making it quite likely that by the end of this, he would be thrown away by the Wan group and spurned by those on the crowned prince's side, falling on neither side. That conflicted thought caused him much turmoil, whereupon he had ultimately given Lu Jian a hint that was so obscure, it nearly couldn't be glimpsed at all. It gave a sense of, if you can guess it, then that's my contribution. If you can't, then I'm not involved in this. At this moment, it should have been his turn first and voice the request that the emperor depose the crowned prince, thereby unveiling today's big show, but he was too slow to speak. Everyone had been waiting for a bit too long. The puzzled officials all looked at each other. Had it not been for the censors watching nearby, they would have likely started exchanging whispers. The Wan group was even more anxious, unsure of what was wrong with Wanan. Several times, Chenghua wanted to reach out and poke him, but Lu Ji was standing right in front of him. The other was maybe intentionally using his body to block him, preventing Chenghua from motioning him to do anything. He felt so resentful that his teeth ached, and he paid respects to Lu Cottonflower's ancestors 8 generations back. Li Zishan finally couldn't hold back, refusing to wait any longer, and declared, "Your Majesty, this subject has something to say." Everyone looked at him then. He was the Assistant Minister of Rites, and the funeral arrangements for the noble consort were being commandeered by the Ministry of Rites. Him speaking up first could be understood. Seeing that the emperor had no intent to stop this, the eunuch on duty from the Supervisory of Ceremony Management called out, "Be quick. This subject heard that the crowned prince will inherit the mandate of heaven and follow the citizens' prayers. He should have received the heaven's great fortune to be entrusted with the entire country, and yet, following his establishment as the crowned prince, his relatives have repeatedly been met with mishap. First, it was his birth mother, and then your own health has been caught up in it, Your Majesty, as had the noble consort's life. This was also accompanied by the waning signs such as the comet over the North Star and the earthquake at Mount Tai. The hall blew up with a bang. Everyone had believed that Li Zishan would open up his mouth to curry favor with the emperor and snatched first the merit of awarding titles posthumously to Lady Wan. Who would have expected that he would instead point a finger at the crowned prince? Before, the deposition of the crowned prince had made a huge clamor. It was concluded with the earthquake at Mount Tai. Since everyone believed that it was summoned by the emperor wanting to depose the crowned prince, they had also believed that he would never bring up this matter for the rest of his life. Against all expectations though, Li Zishan brought up this old matter again, even placing the matter of the earthquake at the prince's head. Since it had been a heaven-sent disaster, the heavens couldn't speak and only the humans could, and thus heaven wills was being interpreted in accordance to what people wanted it to be. Since the crowned prince's affiliates could interpret it as the emperor's lack of virtue, the Wan group could in turn interpret it as the prince's lack of virtue. Both Lu Jian and Su Pu were dumbstruck. They hadn't expected this bit at all. They only carried memorials related to Consort Wan, but the Wan group hadn't acted as expected and pulled something this huge over them. This has happened so suddenly that everyone was caught completely off guard like them. All they could do was watch blankly as Li Zishan continued to speak with confidence. Obviously, his ominous attributes have been fully displayed and the world doesn't tolerate him. Thus, this subject dares to request that you choose another wise one, thus obeying the celestial bodies and the will of the people. Li Zishan pretty much gave no chance for anyone to interrupt him, finishing all his lines in one breath. After that, he bowed, then went back into the lineup. Your Majesty, Li Zishan is blabbering. Forgive this subject for disagreeing. Lu Jian uttered anxiously, reacting late. The earthquake was clearly. He fortunately hadn't completely lost his propriety due to panic to say something like, the earthquake was clearly because you wanted to depose the crowned prince and attracted a warning from the heavens. The earthquake was clearly a natural disaster. Natural disasters are impossible to avoid. What does it have to do with the crowned prince? Moreover, he has been in the position for over 10 years, so how can the noble consort's death be attributed to him? Your Majesty, please do not listen to these sycophants. If I am a sycophant, then what are you, Solon Lu? Li Zishan answered mildly. It's only because you were appointed as an East Palace lecturer that you are unswervingly loyal to him. However, despite the crowned prince's nobility, he is nothing more than an heir apparent. As a subject, your loyalty should be to the sacred one. In the name of loyalty to the crowned prince, you have instead formed a faction for selfish reasons. Clearly, you are not as righteous as you claimed, but merely an educated degenerate. Lu Jian was enraged. Slanderer. My mindfulness of the crowned prince is due to him having been appointed by His Majesty as his rightful and proper successor. I harbor not the slightest bit of ulterior motive. You act so strong while being cowardly inside, Solon Lu. You're clearly suspicious of a guilty conscience, the other said coldly. Lu Jian realized that his ability to fight was bound to not affect them, so he immediately took off his official's cap, knelt in a kowtow and said mournfully, Your Majesty, what crimes has the crowned prince committed? Su Pu knelt as well, Your Majesty, ever since he was bestowed the title, the crowned prince has been deferential, benevolent, and respectful, never lacking in virtue. Please be wise. Many other officials responded on the scene, successively kowtowing. Some just watched on while others were simply members of the Wan group. The hall immediately turned into chaos. The supervising censors has to go out to maintain order, and it took a good minute for the clamor to somewhat calm down. Wanan continued to keep silent as if he had forgotten his duty as the head of the cabinet. He stood motionless, as if he had gone to sleep. Had not everyone have heard him spoke in the court before, other would have nearly believed that he had gone mute. Wan Tong himself was present, but it wasn't his place to speak in an occasion like this. On the account of his status, if he spoke rashly, he would instead arouse the hostility of the civil officials and might even incite opposition amongst those in neutral position. He understood very well that contrarily attitude of theirs. No matter what went on, he could only choose to remain silent. However, in the inside, he hated Wanan to the bones. Had he known that this man would shrink back on the occasion, he would never have let him get away. Wan Tong fiercely glared at Wan An's back, then motioned to Peng Hua with his eyes to continue. In this circumstance, Peng Hua was forced to temporarily assume leadership of the Wan group and bore the responsibility of continuing with the plan. He took it upon himself to propose the posthumous title for noble consort Wan as the Empress of filialness, health, tranquility, austerity, wisdom, benevolence, solemnity, and humanity. Then everyone forgot the deposition of the crowned prince and began to argue over whether Lady Wan ought to be empress or not. How could Lu Jian not caught on what was really going on? What posthumous title? The Wan group clearly wanted to use this cause to depose the crowned prince, and the emperor had likely known in advance, which was why he was silent and cooperating with them in this farce. Su Pu and him exchanged a glance, both seeing the rancor within their counterparts' eyes. Immediately disregarding the Lady Wan affair, they prepared to speak against the issue of the deposing the crowned prince. Right then, everyone heard the emperor raised his voice to say, "We are not dead yet. Why do you all make so much noise?" The officials were forced to kneel and admit their faux pas. Even Lu Jian and Su Pu had to swallow back the words in their mouths. What could they do? The emperor's next words would probably be related to the deposition of the crowned prince. Would they really have to watch blankly as that happened? Would the prince not to be able to escape this conclusion at the end of it all? They were unbearably anxious, but their hands were tied. They couldn't just rashly interrupt the emperor, right? In previous times, the emperor would still consult the cabinet's intent first, but this time, he hadn't even given a word of notice, allowing the Wan group to act as they like. He had probably already set his mind on this. Following a short bout of silence, the emperor spoke, the crowned prince was not my elder, nor is he born from my legitimate wife. It is only because his two elder brothers before him passed on early that it became his turn to be placed into the East Palace. As it is, in terms of seniority, my eldest as birthed by the noble consort ought to be the eldest. From that point of view, since she gave birth to my eldest, giving her the title of Empress posthumously is not at all excessive. However, since our subjects have done all they could to oppose this, we do not wish to see a rift between subject and ruler and decided to only oust. Your Majesty, this subject has something to say. The voice came from behind the crowd. With how silent the hall had been, this sudden noise seemed exceptionally resounding. Everyone turned in astonishment to look behind themselves, only to see two people standing at the entryway of the Hall of the Supreme Harmony. Because the light of the sun was behind them, their features were indistinguishable for a time, and everyone was forced to squint their eyes to make out their details. Lu Jian and Su Pu recognized one of the figures at a glance, nearly losing their voices to call out the other's name, Tang Fan. Indeed, it was Tang Fan. Last night, Wan Tong's residence in Daxing had been broken into by a group of disguised Jinyue which included Sui Zhou and Xueling. They had attacked without warning that the staff and guards that Wan Tong had assigned there got completely wiped out before they could convey the news to their master. With the cooperation of Wan Tong's concubine, Miss Man, they had found a critical evidence in the front courtyard hidden in an underground storehouse. It was crucial enough to turn around the current situation. Since news had never leaked out, Wan Tong was still clueless about what had gone down in his residence. He had no idea that his meticulously hidden trump card has been fished out, brought over before daybreak directly straight into the palace. Even though Tang Fan was on sabbatical at home, he still had his status as an official and was covered by Sui Zhou and Wang Zhi within this operation. Wang Zhi had even gone to the Empress Dowager, explained the entire sequence of events and won an imperial decree straight up. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for him to reach the Hall of Supreme Harmony's gate so easily. After all the rush, he had appeared at the Great Court Assembly at last. Had he shown up a little earlier, he might have avoided the previous chaos, and yet, he was definitely not too late. Your Majesty, this subject has something to say. Tang Fan walked in, dragging along a thin youngster who was stumbling and looked terrified. When everyone got a good look at him, they couldn't help but gasp. Wan Tong's face twisted up horribly. How dare you, Tang Runking? You've trespassed on a court meeting and dared to lay hands on the crowned prince, someone unknown rebuked. The emperor frowned as well. Guards, come. Arrest this traitorous official, dead or alive. Wan Tong shouted in the meanwhile. Figures of imperial bodyguards appeared outside of the hall at the call. Tang Fan wasn't about to sit around and wait for his death, of course, and crisply said, Your Majesty, everyone, take a good look. This boy is not the crowned prince. Hurry up and arrest him. Wan Tong raged. Hold it, the emperor suddenly said. He narrowed his eyes to scrutinize the youth that Tang Fan brought. Had he not looked carefully, he would have assumed that the boy was exactly the crowned prince, as they looked almost the same from the thin hair on his head and the scar on his forehead. There was very little difference. However, the emperor knew that this was not the crowned prince because that boy had never had an expression like that on his life. Who is this person? He asked. Answering Your Majesty, he was hidden in Wan Tong's residence in Daxing. I fear that he was going to be used to bring harm to the crowned prince. Your Majesty, please don't listen to Tang Fan's drivel. How could this subject do something so treacherous? Wan Tong shouted. Tang Fan sneered. Sir Wan, the evidence is concrete. This fake crowned prince is standing alive right before our eyes. He can testify as well as all of those people in your residence. If you are not plotting something, why would you find someone that closely resembled the crowned prince, disguise him and even taught him on how to speak and act in the same exact way as the prince? He turned to the youngster and said, You, go on and explain what actually was going on. After the boy had been captured by Suizhou's group last night, he had long stated the whole truth. His surname was Chu, given name Ping. He had been the son of a peasant family on the border of Sichuan and Yunnan. To avoid famine, he had been fleeing to Qingzhou when had come across Wantong, who was visiting his family in his hometown. Noticing that his features were somewhat similar to the crowned prince's, Wantong had gotten an idea. He took the boy into his ranks and had people teach him to read and write, imitate the crowned prince's actions, and even altered his outward appearance to make him even more resemble the prince little by little, so that one day he could be put to use. Now that the fake crowned prince had been exposed, Wantong's ulterior motives were crystal clear. Despite having already decided to declare a different crowned prince, upon hearing such nefarious plot, the emperor became furious. Wantong had exploited his affection for Lady Wan to play him for a fool, making him march to the beat of his drum. After explaining the entire thing, Tang Fan smiled lightly at the end and said, "Your Majesty, this subject would like to thank the head of the cabinet as well. Had it not been for his timely warning and clue given to Solon Lu, who let me know, I would have never learned of this fact, and everyone here would have been kept in complete darkness by Wantong and manipulated by his whims." His voice resounded within the hall. "I would like to ask how someone with unfathomable motives could sincerely give thought to the country and its imperial ancestors. He only wanted to use the opportunity of replacing the crowned prince to plunder the riches for himself and even turn the successor of the throne into a puppet he could control." Wantong was filled with hatred. He had never expected that the one who would end up ruining things for him was the ever-secretive Wanan. No wonder he had kept silent this whole time. He was waiting for this. Why did he end up cooperating with an opportunistic, unscrupulous bastard like him? His eyes were shot red as his fists clenched tightly. He really wanted to go over and strangle Tang Fan to death and wanted to beat Wanan to death all the more. However, he knew he could not do that because they were not that important. Even if he killed them, he wouldn't be able to run away. No one was guarding against him right now because, in accordance to the rules, even if one hated merits or nobility, none was allowed to bring swords into the Hall of Supreme Harmony. Everyone had to hand over their weapons before they could enter here. For that reason, the empty-handed Wantong was nothing but a toothless tiger. Bribing the imperial guard beforehand was also impossible. In this dynasty, seizing the throne through palace rebellion was close to impossible. Besides, if he had the capability, why would he need to coax the emperor to depose the current crowned prince? Yet, as the saying goes, cornered dogs would jump over walls. Someone at the end of their rope did not need to use any sort of common logic. During the brief moment while Tang Fan spoke, Wantong had come to a clear realization. Him using the emperor's affection for his sister to compel him to depose the crowned prince was already the utmost limit. Someone attempting to defraud the imperial bloodline was utterly unforgivable. Even if the emperor didn't want him death, the Empress Dowager and the rest of the court officials would never let him off. The only ending waiting for him was inevitably still be death, with the only difference lying in whether he would be beheaded in Keishikao or be offered poisoned wine to die with some semblance of decency. That was completely unacceptable to him. He still had countless treasures and riches that he had not yet freely spent. The taste of wielding power was much too divine. He had been so used to glory and wealth that he couldn't conceive an image of himself being toppled to the ground. Thus, he made the stupidest, most irredeemable action in his life. Before Tang Fan had finished saying his last few words, and while everyone's attention was in Tang Fan and the fake crowned prince beside him, Wantong suddenly moved with the momentum of lightning, throwing himself at the emperor as he sat on his throne. His movements were quick. No one was able to react yet and merely watched his figure flying towards the emperor. The supervisory of ceremony management eunuch standing beside the emperor only had enough time to scream, then moved in front of the emperor to defend him. However, Wantong had anticipated that and viciously pushed the eunuch aside with such force that the eunuch was caught off guard and tumbled to the corner. The emperor's face contorted slightly, His expression reflected the fear in his heart, but his physical body couldn't catch up with his emotional reaction. Completely at a loss, he could only watch on as the other man jumped at him. Thump. The emperor heard a muffled sound, but he had no idea what had happened. That was until Wantong's eyes widened and his hand suddenly dropped. Immediately afterwards, the emperor saw an arrowhead sticking out of the other man's chest. An arrow through the heart. He watched Wantong collapsed in front of him with his eyes wide opened, not closing in death while his mind was still a blank expanse. All at the once, the hall became noisy again, with everyone rushing forth to ask him if he was all right as the imperial guards dragged Wantong's corpse away. He snapped out of it and found that the back of his hands was sweating. Even his inner robes had been soaked through. At the hall's entryway, Suizhou set down his bow as he said gravely, "This subject was late to arrive and save you. The traitor has already been put to death. Please forgive me, Your Majesty." The emperor managed to recover some of his imperial composure and answered, "It's good that you arrived in time, Guangchuan." Switching over, he pointed at Li Zishan and ordered, "Arrest him as well." Li Zishan was terrified and dropped to a panic kneel to beg, "Have mercy, Your Majesty. This subject is not in cohorts with Wantong." Penghua, Yinji, and the rest of the members of the Wan group were also awfully pale. With Wantong dead, their efficiency was limited and would not be able to make any sort of waves. The situation was finally concluded. Tang Fan didn't have the spare time to observe everyone's reactions. His gaze searched the audience and then his expression slightly changed. He tossed the fake prince off to the imperial guards, then walked over to where Suizhou was to ask, "Where's Liang Fang? If that man was not eliminated, great troubles would come." The Wan group lacked scruples, but Liang Fang was instrumental in proposing the idea and rigging everything up. Suizhou shook his head and answered, "Wang Ji went to find him." At that very moment, a minor eunuch with thin body was walking along the road towards the palace gates. His head was bowed, his steps quick. He looked young, of about 17 at most, and not tall. In the palace, he would not be remarkable at all. If there weren't 100 people like him, then there were definitely 80. Even though an incident had happened at the Hall of Supreme Harmony, it would take some time for the entire defense grid of the Forbidden City to be alerted, and thus at the moment, the patrols of some areas were still more or less the same as usual. Seeing that the eunuch was about to exit the palace, the soldier outside of the Gate of West Magnificence reached out his hand, as was usual. The eunuch also took the identification token off from his middle and handed it over, his attitude relaxed and normal. "You're from the Supervisory of Miscellany? What are you leaving the palace for?" The soldier took out his name register and jotted down the other person's name, asking questions in accordance to the rules. "To buy things under Eunuch Chen's orders," the eunuch answered, looking downwards. The soldier returned the token to him. The other thanked him and continued on his way. "Stop right there," someone harshly yelled behind him. The eunuch didn't heed the words, not even turning his head. Moreover, upon hearing the voice, he suddenly sprung forth, hurrying forward. He accelerated so quickly that all the soldiers seemed dumbstruck, and yet the one behind him was even quicker, catching up to him in no time. The eunuch heard the sound of the weapon slicing the air beside his ear. His body was forced to change direction, dodging to one side, but the wielder of the blade seemed to have predicted this in advance and firmly sealed off his path ahead. Out of options, the eunuch was forced to go from defense to offense. Responding to the other's attack, he used the momentum to lunge back, then draw out the saber of one of the soldiers. The images of the two opponents flashed quickly, and they had exchanged over 10 moves in the blink of an eye. What was shocking was, despite the eunuch's young age, his martial arts and balance was not a bit inferior to that of his opponent. Their weapons clanged as they collided. The bystanders could only see flashes of their blade but could hardly make out their moves. Liang Fang, seeing an opportunity, Wang Ji revealed the other's true identity. "You colluded with the White Lotus Society and hid in the palace with ill intent. Now that Wan Tong has been executed, you still think that you can keep on resisting when you're already backed into a corner. You might as well surrender if you know what's good for you. His Majesty is kind and might let you keep your life." The young eunuch, who had been revealed to be Liang Fang in disguise, laughed icily and did not answer. His saber's attack got even harsher, forcing Wang Ji to be in a slight disadvantage for a time when the other switched tactics from offensive to defensive as he silently and emotionlessly kept watch for any opening. Liang Fang cackled, then said in a voice that was completely incompatible with that young-looking face, "I was the one who taught you swordmanship. Why do you think you can win against me?" His blade cut a line on Wang Ji's shoulder. Wang Ji's figure was unshaken. Taking advantage of the chance, he stepped right in as the point of his sword streaked like a meteor towards Liang Fang's chest. Startled, Liang Fang had to sweep backwards, though that left him with no way to obstruct the encroaching attack. Truthfully, he didn't want to fight Wang Ji at all, nor would he have done something as stupid as Wan Tong did by threatening the emperor. The moment he had learned that Tang Fan had appeared with the fake crowned prince, he knew that the Wan group had failed and that they would definitely implicate him. For that reason, his aim was clear: he had to leave the palace. As long as he got out of the Forbidden City, he would be like a dragon returning to the ocean, roaming the wide world evermore. Those people wanting to find him would be basically fishing needles off from the seafloor. He didn't want to fight and was intending just to run away. Winning against Wang Ji or even killing Wang Ji would not do him any good in his opinion. However, Wang Ji had the determination to win this fight. This man had to be captured. While Liang Fang was retreating, Wang Ji recovered the ground to throw himself at him, his spring-gilt saber going right at the tiny gap in Liang Fang's defenses. His speed was not at all affected by the injury in his shoot as he moved as quick as lightning. Liang Fang's escape route was being blocked by a tree. If he still wanted to run, he needed to turn around it, but that would inevitably slow him down even if it was just for a short moment. When martial experts exchanged blows, that short moment would be enough for a lot of things to occur. Seeing the smirk at the corners of Wang Ji's mouth, he was surprised to realize that he had apparently fallen into the other's long-set trap. Still, he had no choice but to turn his body to the side, avoiding the tree. Now was the time. Wang Ji narrowed his eyes, flung his saber out and plunged it straight into Liang Fang's shoulder. Liang Fang screamed, his figure faltering then falling down. Taking this opportunity, Wang Ji leapt forward and hit the other's back with his palm, right over his heart. Liang Fang spurted out fresh blood from his mouth, no longer having the strength to escape or counterattack. Had he willed himself to leave a little bit earlier and didn't place his trust in luck that by staying to determine whether Wan Tong would fail or not, Wang Ji might not have managed to catch up to him as he did now. There was no remedy for regrets in this world. If everyone knew in advance what the future has in store for them, then the future would change again. This was why the exhaustive stratagem of the human mind was to no avail in many different ways. He gasped harshly for air. He was not dead yet, for he wouldn't die so easily of course, but neither life or death matters to him now. Wang Ji came over and asked, "Not running away anymore? Why did you stop?" The other man glared straight at Wang Ji, as if his gaze could suddenly turn into a knife's edge. "Don't be so smug, cough, cough. You've sinned too much. Sooner or later, you'll meet your retribution just like me. You wait and see. After the new emperor ascend, he won't be able to tolerate you either." Wang Ji sneered. This man never believed in heaven's reincarnation or karmic retribution. If karma really works, you should have died 800 years ago, you son of a bitch. Don't think that I don't know that the palace maid Furo had only plotted against the crowned prince on your order. He drew his saber out of the other man's body, which caused Liang Fang to cry out in pain as his blood gushed out. "Eunuch Liang, why don't you admit the truth? The reason you failed was because your ambitions were too big compared to your meager skills. In other words, you were too stupid. Isn't that correct?" Liang Fang's body spasmed, his eyes rolling back. It was unclear whether it was because of pain or out of anger. Naturally, Wang Zhi wasn't going to kill him, as there were many secrets that could be squeezed out from him, such as how did he manage to collude with Li Zilong? Had Li Zilong being able to scale the Longevity Hill and spy on the palace due to his assistance? Then again, none of that was very important at the moment. At most, it would let them catch some small fry hidden within the palace. All the storms had mostly been quelled by this point. In anyone's expected lifetimes, the White Lotus Society likely wouldn't be able to recover its vitality. As for whether anyone could cause havoc once again using its name after some decades has passed, that was not something that their generation could care about. Wang Zhi looked up. The sky was already bright with a hint of marble white slightly peeking out in the distance east, seeming to carry some sort of message. A group of people hurried out of the palace gates with Suizhou and Tang Fan's figures amongst them. Only after exhaling lightly did he finally felt the burning pain in his shoulder. Thankfully, everything was at its end. He thought back to what Liang Fang has just said. After the new emperor ascended, what would the situation be? Would the currently compassionate crowned prince end up becoming like his father later on? Who knew? Maybe he would, maybe he wouldn't. Wang Zhi felt that no matter what, the situation could never be any worse than it was now. Torchlight sparked a return of extensive spring and the furnace burned in the night. No matter how long the dark night was, the moment of daybreak would eventually come. End of the main story.